Ladies and gentlemen, there's an unusual ache in being alone. It feels unnatural, almost as if there's an error in the very fabric of existence. We are born into a world teeming with people, yet somehow you find yourself separated, detached, as though the universe itself has turned away from you. The silence can be overwhelming, the emptiness unbearable. But what if I told you that this solitude isn't a mistake, that it serves a purpose far beyond what you can currently comprehend? Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, believed that moments of isolation were not mere accidents, essential steps in the journey towards self-discovery. The universe isn't punishing you, it's reshaping you. The real question is, will you resist it or will you embrace it? Initially, isolation feels like rejection. We equate loneliness with failure, with abandonment. You look around and see others flourishing in their relationships, surrounded by friends appearing to be perfectly at ease in the world. Meanwhile, you are left questioning, why me? What did I do to deserve this? But Young had a different perspective. He believed that those destined for something greater often find themselves apart, not because they are undeserving of connection, but because their path demands it. These periods of profound solitude are not penalties, but invitations, calls to explore the parts of yourself that remain hidden in the chaos of daily life. Most people fear solitude because it forces them to confront their true elves, but those who embrace it discover something remarkable. Consider the greatest thinkers in history, philosophers, artists, scientists, spiritual leaders. They all experienced phases of deep seclusion. Buddha sat alone beneath the bod tree and spent years in solitude wrestling with his thoughts. Even Jung himself withdrew into deep introspection to grasp the complexities of the human psyche. Why? Why? Because real transformation doesn't happen in crowded rooms. It occurs in the silent, uncomfortable spaces where you are left with nothing but yourself. The universe isolates. Meant to awaken, compelling them into a state where distractions fade and self-discovery begins. If you are feeling lost and disconnected, perhaps it's not because you've been overlooked. Perhaps it's because you are being prepared for something only solitude can reveal. But here's the true challenge. Most people don't endure this isolation. They succumb to despair, assuming that being alone means being unwanted. But Jung would argue that this is the greatest illusion of all. Loneliness is not a curse. It is the gateway to something deeper. The question is, will you use this time to understand yourself? To grow, to become something greater? Or will you let the silence consume you? The universe has given you this moment for a reason. How you choose to handle it will shape everything. When you are isolated, your mind becomes louder. The distractions of daily life vanish, and suddenly you are confronted with thoughts you have long avoided. This is where most people falter. The mind replays every failure, every insecurity, every doubt. You start to feel as though you are drowning in your own consciousness. But Jung understood something critical. This process is essential. He called it individuation. Toward becoming your authentic self, most people live fragmented lives, their identities shaped by the expectations of others. But in isolation, those external influences disappear, leaving only the raw, unfiltered version of you. It is terrifying, but it is the only route to genuine self-awareness. The reason isolation feels unbearable is that it forces you to face what you've been running from. Maybe it's past wounds. Maybe it's the realization that the life you've constructed isn't truly yours in the absence of directions. Your subconscious begins to speak. Jung believed that this confrontation with the self was the foundation of real growth. Most people will do anything to escape it, turning to social media, relationships, constant activity. But those who endure it, who sit with their thoughts rather than fleeing from them, emerge transformed. The pain of isolation is not punish, it is purification. But this is where many people sink into despair. Instead of recognizing solitude as an opportunity, they misinterpret it as rejection. They spiral into self-doubt, convincing themselves that they are undeserving of connection. This is the greatest danger of isolation, not the loneliness itself, but the false belief that it is eternal. Eternal cautioned against identifying too strongly with suffering, yes. Solitude is painful, but pain is not the enemy. It is the teacher. The more you resist it, the more it dominates you. But if you lean into it, you welcome the silence, you begin to hear something beneath it. Your true voice, the individuals who emerge from isolation with wisdom and strength, are those who understand its purpose. They don't themselves as victims of loneliness, but as students of it. They use this time to reflect, to unlearn what society has ingrained in them, and to reconnect with their inner world. This is why so many visionaries, mystics, and geniuses spend time alone, because isolation is not an empty space, it is a rite of passage that distinguishes those who are merely existing from those who are truly alive. It may feel as though you've been abandoned, but what if you are actually being tested throughout history? Those who accomplished great things were often thrust into periods of extreme solitude. They were stripped of comfort, removed from society, and forced to confront themselves. This isn't random, it's an initiation. The universe does not grant wisdom freely. It demands that you prove yourself worthy of it. And isolation is the first test. Most people fail this test. They surrender to bitterness, believing that life has treated them unfairly. They squander their solitude in self-pity, waiting for the world to rescue them. But Jung believed that those who seek truth must withstand the discomfort of loneliness. Why? Because only in solitude do you learn who you truly are without the influence of others. Without the distractions of everyday life, you are compelled to confront the raw reality of your own existence. If you are going through a phase of isolation, understand this. The universe has not abandoned you. It is observing, waiting to see how you respond. Will you waste this time longing for the past, or will you use it to evolve? This is what determines whether solitude will break you or awaken you. Those who pass this test emerge stronger, more self-aware, and prepared for the next stage of their journey. But those who resist it, who attempt to escape it, only prolong their suffering. You have a choice. You can perceive your isolation as a punishment or as a calling if you are alone right now. Ask yourself, what is the universe trying to show me? What aspects of myself have I neglected? What truths have I been too afraid to confront? Jung believed that the answers to these questions could only be found in solitude. This is why the universe isolates those it intends to transform, because only those who are willing to face themselves can truly change. There is something most people don't comprehend about solitude. It doesn't just reveal who you are. It forges you into someone new, and the noise of the world fades when the distractions disappear. What remains at first? It feels like emptiness, like a void. But within that void, something is forming. Jung believed that deep within the unconscious mind lies a version of you that has never been touched by societal conditioning, expectations, or fear. This is your true self, buried beneath years of external influences, and the only way to access it is through solitude. In our modern world, we are never truly alone. We are constantly bombarded with stimuli, social media, television, endless entertainment. These distract actions prevent us from facing ourselves. Real growth occurs in stillness. Jung saw solitude as a portal to the unconscious mind, a space where your deep thoughts, desires, and fears rise to the surface. Most people never reach this place because they are too afraid of what they might uncover. But those who do, those who embrace their solitude, instead of avoiding it, discover something extraordinary power. Think of every major spiritual tradition. Monks withdraw to the mountains, prophets wander. The desert sages spend years in silence. Why? Because isolation is not about suffering. It's about unlocking something deeper. Jung believed that within each individual exists a force greater than the self, a connection to something beyond the material world. He referred to it as the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of human wisdom that lies dormant within us all. Solitude is the key to unlocking it. However, solitude is not merely about discovering yourself. This is where resilience is forged. You learn to think independently, to trust your instincts, to become the architect of your own mind. Most people go through life reacting to the world around them. They seek approval, validation, and direction from others. But those who embrace solitude uncover something invaluable. They do not need the world to define them, for they already know who they are. And so here you are, seeking meaning, the silence, it feels unbearable. Now, but what if this is the beginning of something profound? You believe each individual has a destiny apart. Uniquely, there's but most never find it, as they are too preoccupied, too entangled in societal expectations. The universe isolates you for a reason. It is compelling you to turn inward, to listen to the voice that has long been drowned out. Initially, solitude may seem. Endure it long enough, begin to see it for what it truly is, a gateway to a life not governed by fear, by conformity, or by incessant need for external validation. Jung spoke of the process of individuation, the journey toward becoming your most authentic self. But this journey is not for the faint-hearted. It demands courage. The courage to walk alone, to embrace uncertainty, to trust that the silence holds the answers. You seek the reality is that those people will never understand what you are experiencing. They will advise you to put yourself out there, to move on, to be normal. But you are not destined for an ordinary life. If you were, you wouldn't be here. Listening to this, the universe does not isolate those meant to blend in. It isolates those meant to awaken. It strips away everything familiar, compelling you to confront yourself so that you may emerge stronger, wiser. So the question remains, what will you do with solitude? Will you resist it, fight it, attempt to escape it, or will you embrace it, heed its teachings, and use it to become the person you are destined to be? The choice is yours. But remember this, the universe does not make mistakes if you find yourself alone. Right now it is because you are meant to be, and what you do next will shape everything. We live in a world, more connected than ever. A world where at any moment you can reach out and speak to someone across the planet. And yet loneliness is at an all-time high, depression. Anxiety, a pervasive sense of emptiness. Why, if connection were the solution, wouldn't we all feel fulfilled? Jung would argue that most people are not truly connected at all. They are merely distracted. They surround themselves with others, not out of genuine connection, but out of fear of being alone with themselves. Chase validation, approval, a sense of belonging, anything to avoid the silence. But in doing so, they forfeit the one connection that truly matters, the one with themselves. Jung believed that most relationships are built on illusion. People wear masks, play roles, and conceal their true selves in order to be accepted, but such connections are fragile, founded on appearances, on shallow interactions, on an underlying fear of being unmasked. This is why so many feel alone, even in a crowd, because they are not truly seen, nor truly known, and worse, they do not even know themselves. The tragedy is that most will never break free from this illusion. They will spend their lives leaping from one relationship to another, one distraction to the next, in a desperate attempt to fill a void. They do not understand isolation dismantles the illusion. It forces you to face reality when you are alone. There is no one left to impress, no mask, to where you are left with nothing but the raw truth of who you really are for many. Live in distraction to find comfort in empty relationships, to evade the deep, uncomfortable work of self-discovery. But those who resist this truth merely prolong their suffering. They remain trapped in a cycle of superficial connections, never truly finding peace, never truly discovering themselves. The irony is that true connection can only be experienced by those who have first learned to be alone, only when you truly know yourself, your fears, your desires, your strengths and weaknesses. Can you form relationships that are authentic only when you no longer fear solitude? Can you connect with others? Without losing yourself in the process, the universe isolates you, not to punish you, but to liberate you from false connections, from illusions, from the ceaseless need for external validation, because only when you no longer depend on others to feel whole can you truly connect with them. There comes a point in solitude when the silence ceases to be peaceful and becomes unbearable. The emptiness feels as though it will consume you. This is what many spiritual traditions refer to as the dark night of the soul, a period of immense suffering where everything you once believed collapses. It feels like death, and in many ways it is, but Jung would argue that this death is necessary. It is the death of the false self, the identity constructed out of fear expectations and the illusion of control. Only by allowing it to die can you be reborn as something great. They surrender. They convince themselves that life has no meaning, that they will never emerge from this darkness, depression, nihilism, despair. These are the perils of the dark night. But Jung understood that this suffering is not an end. It is the destruction of everything false within you, making way for something new. Those who emerge from this process are unrecognizable from who they were. Before they are transformed, stripped of illusion, reborn with a clarity that few will ever attain. Yet navigating this stage is arduous, most resist it. They cling to their old selves, their old ways of thinking. They seek escape, distraction, addiction, anything to avoid the suffering, but the only way out is through. You must allow the old version of yourself to die. You must relinquish everything that no longer served you, everything that was built on fear rather than truth. This is what Jung termed individuation, the painful yet necessary process of becoming your true self. If you are in this stage right now, understand this: you are not dying. You are transforming. The universe has isolated you because it is stripping away everything that is not truly you. It feels unbearable now. But beyond this suffering lies something extraordinary, a version of yourself that is stronger, wiser, liberated from the illusions that once bound you. The dark night of the soul is not the end. It is the threshold of something far greater than you can yet conceive. What if this isolation is not arbitrary, is not merely suffering, but preparation? Jung believed that every individual has a purpose, a path uniquely their own. But most never find it because they are too distracted, too ensnared by the expectations of others. The universe isolates you for a reason. It is refining you, shaping you, readying you for what lies ahead. This is why so many great thinkers, leaders, and visionaries endured periods of profound solitude. Not because they were weak, but because they were being prepared for something greater. Consider history's greatest minds: young Buddha, Tesla. They all faced isolation, rejection, suffering, but they did not allow it to destroy them. They wielded it. They let solitude sharpen their intellect, fortify their spirit, transmuted their suffering into wisdom, their loneliness into power. The universe does not waste pain. It does not isolate those destined for nothing. It isolates those meant for greatness. But here is the truth: most will never realize this. They will squander their solitude, lamenting, yearning for the best utter too late. Past awaiting rescue, they will perceive isolation as a curse rather than a calling, and in doing so, they will forfeit the opportunity of a lifetime. The question is, will you waste this time, or will you make use of it? Will you perceive your solitude as suffering or as the inception of something extraordinary the universe has granted you this moment for? For a reason, you are being molded into something greater than you were before. But only if you embrace the process, only if you cease resisting it, only if you trust that this isolation is not the conclusion of your journey, but the beginning. The ultimate truth of isolation is the hardest to accept. You must walk this path alone. No one can undertake it for you. No one can provide you with the answers. No one can rescue you. And that is exactly the point. Jung believed that true transformation cannot be bestowed. It must be earned. This is why the universe isolates you, because only in solitude can you cultivate the strength, the wisdom, the self-reliance required to become who you were destined to be. Many people spend their lives waiting for someone to lead them, to offer them direction. They seek teachers, mentors, saviors. But the difficult truth is that no one else can complete this work for you. The most profound lessons, the deepest insights, the most life-altering transformations, they can only emerge from within. This is why solitude is essential. It compels you to become your own guide. You will feel the urge to turn back. You will long for comfort, to escape the unease of being alone. But if you succumb to this impulse, you will never reach your full potential. The universe has given you this solitude as a gift. The only question is, will you accept it? Most people spend their entire existence running from themselves. Their days with noise, distractions, and endless external validation. Anything to avoid the silence, because in that silence they would be confronted with something terrifying. the truth of who they truly are. But the universe has a way of stripping away illusions, of forcing you into circumstances. Dismantle you so that you can reconstruct yourself into something greater. This is why you have been isolated. Not as punishment, but as preparation. Patient not to weaken you, but to make you indomitable. Exhilarating, we have explored the illusions of transformation, the dark night of the soul. All of it leads to one truth. You are not who you once believed you were. The identity you clung to, the person you used to be, was never the real. It was a version of you shaped by external influences, by fear, by societal expectations. But now all of that is being dismantled. And yes, it is painful. Yes, it feels as if you are being torn apart. But that is because a new version of you is emerging, one that is stronger, wiser, and no longer shackled by illusion. Jung understood that isolation is the gateway to individuation, the journey of becoming fully yourself. But here is the reality. Most people never reach this stage. They resist their solitude. They fight the transformation rather than the profound gift that it truly is. And because of this, they remain snared in cycles of distraction, never fully realizing their potential. But that is refining you, dismantling you, so that you can be rebuilt into something greater. Will you embrace it? Will you embrace self to be transformed? Or will you persist in resisting, persistent seeking refuge in the comfort of illusion? The choice is yours, and here is the truth. If you choose, I'll make you choose. To accept this process, if you wholly embrace this solitude, something extraordinary occurs. You begin to change in ways you never imagined. You develop an unshakable inner strength. You become someone who is no longer reliant on external validation. You cease seeking approval, cease craving shallow connections, cease allowing fear to dictate your actions. You become something rare, individual who is truly free. This is why so few people attain true self-actualization, because the cost is solitude. The cost is facing yourself without distraction, with escape. Own mind and accepting whatever you find there, and it is yours. It will break you before it remakes you. But if you can endure it, if you can embrace it, you will emerge as something unstoppable. Observe the world around you. Look at the people who have never undertaken this inner journey will see. In their eyes, the fear, the insecurity, the quiet desperation of those who have never truly met themselves. They conceal themselves behind distractions, behind relationships, behind a carefully curated persona. They are terrified of being alone because deep down they know they are strangers to themselves. But that is not your destiny. You were chosen for something greater. So seize this time, this solitude. Stop resisting. Stop resenting it and start asking yourself, what is the universe trying to teach me? Who am I meant to become? What illusions do I need to release? If you lean into these questions, if you allow yourself to traverse this process fully, you will emerge on the other side transformed. You will become the kind of person who no longer dreads soft solitude, because you will have discovered true power within it. And here is the final truth. Once you have undergone this transformation, will never be the same. The things that once held you back, the judgments of others, the need for validation, the fear of rejection, will no longer wield power over you. You will be liberated in a way that most people will never comprehend. And that is the most profound gift the universe could ever grant. You so now the choice is before you. You accept this path. Will you embrace this solitude and allow it to shape you into who you were always meant to be? Or will you resist? Will you battle against it and remain confined in the illusions that once defined you? If you are ready to embark on this journey, if you are prepared to transform, then now begin by embracing where you are. Begin by recognizing that this moment, this solitude, is not the conclusion of your story. It is the commencement of something far greater than you can envision. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It helps spread these ideas to more people who need to hear them. And if you want to explore this topic even further, check the pinned comment below. There is more waiting.